often they would have their wine festivals lying on couches, like the Romans. The Romans got it from the Etruscans. So you didn't sit on uncomfortable chairs, you had like a sofa to lie down on. And then you would drink the best possible wine and have great conversations. And so they, in their tombs, they would draw these things, or they would make terracotta models of a couple on the tomb, man and wife buried in there, having their party in the afterlife. That was their idea of heaven, which is, you know, similar to mine, only I think there's a library there as well. You can't spend your whole, you know, time partying.
As long as there's good wine.
Yeah, in the evenings, but you've got to spend the day studying. And the Etruscans would have loved that because they liked literacy and writing. Okay, what's your... Oh.
Marduk.
All right, 2 of fire. Now, Marduk is a warrior god, hence fire. And he's from Babylon. He is, you know, a very important god, king of the gods. And he is actually fighting for righteousness. So he is the 2 of fire. And, you know, some people say that's a bit mean, he should be the king, but hey, the king of fire is Ra, the Egyptian god. So Marduk is the 2 of fire, which is important as well. And now, I need to put page numbers in the index. There's a little job. Yes. The picture shows the ziggurat, which were his temples in Babylon, which the god dwells up in the temple. And he was the deity who was the patron of Babylon, which became very important from the 18th century BC onwards, at the time of Hammurabi. And he had a temple with statues. They think his name is probably pronounced Marduk, and that it's derived from Amar-Uttu, the immortal son of Uttu, who was the sun god, Uttu. So, you know, scholars of religious studies have gone into all this. But he became very important because Babylon became quite a warrior sort of place, and he was regarded as the god of righteousness, leading them to victory. And we find remnants discussing Marduk in Syria, Palestine, in Akkadian documents in cuneiform. From Ugarit, he appears in philosophical treatises. And there's a poetic work called Ludlul Bel Nemeki, describing how the fortunes of the hero, a man of high rank, turned one day into disaster, just like Job. And this is, they think, the origin of the Job book in the Bible, because the Hebrews were captured by the Babylonians and put into exile. Well, they studied their writing and their literature. And in the Orthodox Jewish calendar, the month names are from Babylonian, which is interesting. And a lot of the Genesis stories, the Garden of Eden and Noah's flood, they're all Babylonian priestly tales. I go into all this. Why has he come in? Well, obviously there's a war going on in Europe. Russia and Ukraine are fighting. There's a war on the southeastern frontiers of Europe and the Middle East. Palestine, Gaza. I mean, there's wars going on in people's minds. We're all schizophrenically not sure whose side we're on. We want to be for peace, but then how can you do that? You know, etc., etc. So the good news about Marduk is that I think it's about channeling that male aggressive energy in towards truth and righteousness. And if you met a true priest of Marduk, they wouldn't say go off and join the Foreign Legion or join the CIA and assassinate people. No, they would say master your energy and and hold out for truth. So it's interesting. He's found in an incantation letter against somebody called Nambul, meaning the wrong or the bad, and who's directed to appear before Marduk for judgment. So there's a lot of depth to Marduk. He's an interesting character as a god, and I think that's why he's come in. In the legends, he defeats the evil force of Tiamat. He has these super weapons, and Tiamat is the goddess of absolute crazy chaos, who wants everything to be destroyed, and floods everywhere, and chaos and genocide, and just like a crazy person. So Marduk is the force that can rein that in, and say, okay, enough with your chaos, Tiamat. We want peace, thank you. Right, okay, well, I better do a goddess card as well. Do you want to hold them out for me and I'll choose? These are from Sophia. So today we have, this is Goddess Tarots, we have Sarada Devi, the Divine Mother. Unconditional love exists within me. The presence of love is the absence of judgment. Sarada Devi is a Hindu deity, and Sophie did get to India. She went to a meeting of the Delphic Council, which I managed to organise for her, and she loved it. This woman is an actual person. Sarada Devi was born in India in 1853 to poor Brahmin parents. As a little girl, she worshipped a clay figurine of the goddess Kali. She meditated and began to have visions. And at the age of 5, she was betrothed to a priest in the Dakshinawar Kali temple, who was called Ramakrishna. And 10 years later, she joined him in the temple, and they began a lifelong spiritual marriage together. Ramakrishna became a very famous Indian philosopher, and Sarada was considered to be his spiritual wife and also his disciple. And she founded a monastic order for women, he did for the men. And in turn, she became a guru, treating all her disciples as her children. Many of her devotees say that she initiated them in dreams. She appeared as a goddess in human form in their dream, giving them a mantra. And so what this card represents is our need to receive what we can call transpersonal initiation from that divine wisdom level, from the goddess herself. I've just finished listening or reading Plato's book, The Laws, which has taken me some months of study. And he talks constantly about the gods. Plato comes out in this last book of his life as a out-and-out believer in religions. He's kept it sort of close to his chest in his other books, but he's very orthodox in the last book, and he's saying, look, it's only from the level of the gods that we can find illumination. And I think this is what this card is saying. We have to go to that highest level. Okay, well, I've got one last thing I want to do before we finish here, an extra little thing, to do with religious mathematics, which I've talked about. And in my book on logic, I was wondering where in my philosophical mathematics of religion book I'd dealt with logic. And because I've just finished this book on the logic of peace, and I found this amazing chapter, which I wrote several years ago, chapter 155, which is called scholasticism, mathematics, and the medieval quadrivium. And in these chapters, I do an exercise, which is like a thought experiment or a meditation. So to finish the Philosophy Club today, I'm going to read out the exercise. So what I want people to do, if you're watching online or listening, close your eyes, and I'm going to read out like a vision exercise, right? So it's an experiment. And it's about scholasticism and logic. So go to your innermost sanctuary and enter a deep meditation space. From where you ascend in your light body to the higher etheric world. And here you are met by your muse angel, who greets you with a smile and bids you follow her. You find yourself flying above beautiful fields, valleys, rivers, villages, and come eventually to a great city nestling beside a curving river. You recognize it as Paris from its famous landmarks. Here you find yourself descending together into a glorious cloud hovering above the Sorbonne until you come to rest outside a building of rainbow and white coloured brick glass. You enter and are met at the welcome desk, over which a sign says, "Welcome to the Heavenly University of Paris." And you're met by several other muse angels who direct you to a large conference room where the meeting is just getting underway. You recognise many leading thinkers on the dais, which is a semicircular shape. And anybody who was anybody in the entire history of scholasticism is either on the dais or in the audience. The first speaker is Gerbert of Aurillac, who explains something of what he'd done in his lifetime's quest for wisdom, and how he thought religious mathematics was indeed a beautiful idea. Next, we hear from Masyama al-Majriti, who died in 1008, of Andalusia. And he said he'd likewise seen the goal of all science in the furtherance of divine wisdom. But for this, true intellectual humility is necessary. Then we heard from Michael Psellos, formerly of Byzantium, who explained that just as he had once reformed the University of Byzantium, so now he was working with a universal intellectual team to reform higher education worldwide and make it more integrated and holistic, making sure that every undergraduate should study the entire trivium as well as philosophy and theology before going on to specialise in any particular branch of learning, such as medicine or law or history. Then we heard from Adelard of Bath, who explained something of his work in astronomy, astrology, philosophy and mathematics. And he said he felt scholars should be encouraged to travel about and spend time in different universities around the world. Next we heard from Robert Grosseteste, speaking about his intellectual achievements at the University of Oxford, and how he felt that religious mathematics would indeed advance the joined-upness of thinking that we so badly need in our fragmented world nowadays. There were so many mysteries to explore, he said, and wasn't it fun? Then we heard from Albertus Magnus, who said that mathematics and the quadrivium in general needed a vast renewal with modern discoveries, and a map of all knowledge should be worked out, and that he was now working on this with Sir Francis Bacon, devising a new advancement of learning, a treatise based on what leading-edge thinkers admit to not knowing. He felt religious mathematics could be helpful here, since it was like a map of stars and far distant glimpsed countries whose topographical details were still largely unknown. Then we heard from Jordanus de Nemore, who talked about his work in mechanics, on algebra, arithmetic, geometry, and on the mathematics of stereographic projection. He said he was looking forward to the development of religious mathematics and was doing his best to help from the heavenly mathematical laboratories. Next we heard from Roger Bacon, who explored how in his Opus Maius he had tried to advance the idea of a religious mathematics, but he'd incarnated a few centuries too early to get the ideas solidly advanced, and it didn't help being confined to a small room in Oxford for over 12 years either. Now he had the full run of the heavenly Oxford as well as heavenly Paris universities, and was delighted at the way that the idea of religious mathematics was making progress. It could indeed help us break new ground into the unknown. Then we had a dual presentation from St. Thomas Aquinas and Duns Scotus of Scotland, who spoke about the mathematics of enlightenments and whether there were one, two, or many more types of enlightenment, and how could they be measured. Next, we had a dual talk by Nicholas of Cusa and Reggio Montanus about the measurement of faith and knowledge in different spiritual types. There was a whole panoply of other speakers. Take copious notes and wonder what a revived scholastic education for universal enlightenment might look like. And then it's home time. As you come back into your normal body, and whatever the experience was in the imagination, that is the lesson to take home. What I like about scholasticism is it was an attempt to logically understand the working out of the divine. And those thinkers I mentioned, they were part of this amazing project. Any comments, feedback? Did you enjoy that?
Sort of felt relaxed.
Yes, good. One should really, to do it properly, you should lie down and take 20 minutes, and
I would fall asleep.
You might fall asleep, yeah. Anyway, that's just one of 170 such chapters in the book of religious mathematics, and I'm still working on the 4th volume. Anyway, let's hope that this advances this idea of a logic of peace somewhat. An important job for this coming. And let's hope the talks tomorrow in Washington go well.
Yeah.
And that we can get peace in Europe and the world.
As long as he doesn't turn it into a theatrical good television, as he calls it.
Well,
that's a worry.
Let's hope not, eh? Yes.